Hello, everybody. I'm Frank Norris, and this is the fourth version of the Frank and Stan chats. And I'm joined today by my good friend, sitting in the bottom of the screen, Stan Johnson. Say hello, Stan. Are you nervous today?
Less nervous, getting used to this now.
All right, good. And there may be somebody who's a little bit more nervous than Stan this week, who's up in the top left-hand screen. Who are you?
My name's Hazel Remeika.
Okay, Hazel. Well, Hazel and I have worked for probably 7 years, I think, in co-op. And what's your current role there, Hazel?
So I'm currently the partnership manager, working in education for the co-op.
Right. Well, that's going to be the thrust of our discussions today. We're going to have a sort of general chat about cooperative education, what we think it means, the current state of it, where it may be heading. So that's the theme. What we're going to do is I'm going to remind everybody on screen and also those listening and watching about our ground rules that we basically want to be positive. We have no slagging off. We're going to be honest. I think also we're going to appreciate the fact that in education and leadership at the moment, there are a number of challenges which Stan and I have sort of been around for a long time, but neither of us have faced anything like this. And I suspect that's the same for you as well, isn't it, Hazel?
No, absolutely.
Yeah, and so we're going to appreciate the difficulties that there are. And Stan, we're definitely going to have the Stan word, aren't we?
The kind word, yeah. We're going to be kind. And if we're not going to be kind, at least people feeding back can be kind.
Yeah. But actually, the feedback has been positive. So I'm pleased. And for those of you who are watching again, thank you for showing a commitment to this. And please tweet us, email us, send a comment on the YouTube channel if you're making recommendations for areas that you would like to see us discuss. So we're very welcome. We're open to those sort of suggestions. Okay, so we start the process with what's caught your eye. Stan, what's caught your eye this week?
I think leadership, Frank, and lack of it.
You were going to say no slagging off or anything like that.
What I would say is that the leadership of the Prime Minister has been invisible, so that you can't sort of be a leader and not be visible. But secondly, the leadership of head teachers who've having to make some really critical decision on decision. And also the leadership of some councils now who've taken that pressure off some of the schools by saying we'll make that decision when it's time and when it's safe. And I think that shows leadership, whereas a commitment to a date, regardless of the fact that the date might not be appropriate, isn't leadership, in my view.
We could spend the whole of this 15 minutes talking about that, couldn't we? But we'll move on. Hazel, has anything caught your eye this week?
Well, as soon as you said that this might be something that we'll discuss, the Co-op Heritage Trust have been looking at archives, and one of the ones that they've tweeted this week is about the link of CWS to the trade in New York and how we actually, as an organisation, had quite a presence in New York in the 1940s, and talking about how actually our history very much shapes where we are now and that leadership role as well. So that really caught my eye because I think it kind of resonated with me about the history of the co-op movement and how it has influenced the world, not just the UK.
Right, because CWS is the Cooperative Wholesale Society.
Sorry, yes, acronyms. Yeah.
We do fall into all of this, don't we?
Oh, even I knew that one, Frank.
Okay, what's caught my eye? Yesterday, there's a provision in Leeds linked to Co-op Academy Leeds called Frank's Place. It's for students who are finding mainstream education really tough, and there's a risk that they'll be permanently excluded or at least excluded. And Frank's Place, a centre which is named after me, received a civic award for the work they've been doing in supporting families with early breakfasts, and Karen Haller and her team are absolutely amazing. Caroline Foster, just these people going out, really setting a very, very high standard in terms of connections with some vulnerable families. It's been, you know, truly amazing. And it was really nice that I spoke to the Royal Society of Arts this week as well, because they visited Frank's Place and included it as a case study in a report called The Pinball Kids. And they were very keen to see that bit of provision as the example that should be set to other schools as to what they can do to try and reduce exclusions, either fixed or permanent. And of course, there's going to be a problem going forward, I think, in September and October when children return to school. Unless there's a very caring and kind environment, we could find children sort of tipping over the edge and falling out of higher education. So well done, Frank's Place, and made me feel very proud to be associated with it. Okay, so we're going to move on to cooperative education now. I suppose I came to cooperative education quite late in my life, but actually I think I probably was a cooperator without realising it. I don't know if that's your experiences, because I know, Hazel, this is a sort of day job, isn't it? And you're a governor in a cooperative academy school. So should we start with Hazel in terms of when did your journey into cooperative education start, and perhaps how's it changed over time?
Gosh, so it's actually been quite a few years now, because I've worked for the co-op now for 12 years. And obviously, one of the principles of cooperation is education, information and training. So we've always been involved with schools and education. So back when I joined as part of the membership team, we worked very closely with some of the schools that were specialist schools. So we had a business specialist school that was linked with co-op insurance at the time. And so as part of that, we had governors. So I've always done work in the community in terms of what the co-op does to engage with members about cooperation. So I've worked with schools now for probably the whole of my co-op career. But when we started to look at sponsoring academies, that's when our involvement obviously became more, and that relationship became a lot more, a lot closer. So yes, it's been quite a while, and I think seeing the evolution of cooperative trusts through to cooperative academies, and then obviously the multi-academy trusts, and then the growth of the co-op academy trust as well. I've kind of been a part of that journey, not always at the heart of it as I am now, but certainly within the team that are kind of central to that kind of role of what does this mean for the co-op, and what does it mean for the academies that are a part of that.
Yeah. And Stan, what about you?
Local school, you and I had a conversation about it may become a co-op academy, and foolishly I think I threw in, I'd like to be a governor, and ended up as a governor. But what I'm taken with is the values that actually permeate the school. The school's only been a co-op academy for 18 months, and those values, those statements permeate through every discussion, every meeting we have, and they're so easy for people to get. And
you mean the behaviours?
The behaviours, the ways of being.
The ways of being, yeah.
And because they're easy to understand and easy to see, they're actually easy to implement. And you can look at behaviours of students, of staff, and say that's a demonstration of. Mm-hmm. And it's really strong, I feel, in such a short time.
I mean, what are your feelings about that, Hazel? Because actually those ways of being were a reaction, weren't they, to the difficulties that the co-op group had, around 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
Like, have we lost our way a little bit?
I think obviously the ways of being help people to understand what it means to be a part of the co-op, and they were created to help people that work in a very fast-paced retail environment to understand that actually we are a different kind of business. But I think they did lend themselves into education because of the simplicity of the messaging around it. But I think you're right, Stan, the reality of a lot of schools and what they do and how they see themselves, I think that what schools do is very cooperative. You just wouldn't necessarily badge it that way. So what cooperativizing principles do is give something, a structure to enable schools to articulate exactly what it is they stand for, and then what that then looks like in their school community and in their wider community as well.
So, I mean, one of the questions for me is, This is a tough question. I haven't raised it with either of you before, so it's not like a test. So please say I don't know the answers. But the difference between many schools will talk about they view themselves as a community school. We're here to serve our community. But I think some of those schools are not cooperative schools in that sense that they don't seem to me to be cooperative. So in effect, there's a sort of like, instead of using the word community, use the word cooperative, and actually that's the same. But actually, I think that there are some subtleties to the word cooperation, which could strengthen community schools in those people committed to their communities. So, I feel as though the point that Stan made about the values, there are some people that work within community schools that actually aren't always consistent in the way that they try and serve that community. Whereas I think the values, the co-op values, do enable you to create a structure which enables you then to sort of go through, in terms of your thinking, how you might resolve an issue. So I think that there is perhaps more to be done to explain what cooperative school is within a community environment.
Yeah, I think, Frank, there's a difference between where schools talk about community schools. They're probably talking about the school community, as opposed to talking about the community in which the school is based. I think that those are two different approaches. So that a primary school might talk about being a community school or working with the community, but it's actually about the people who are directly involved with the school as parents or as ex-pupil, etc. Whereas what I've found from the co-op is it's actually about the physical community. So that it's about getting out there to people who are not directly related to the school but live in the same area and improving the area around the school, the community. So yeah. I think that's a subtle difference, but I think that's what I've noticed.
Right.
I agree with that. And I do think that that's something that's kind of, I guess, it's about the thinking and the mindset of people that are either part of that school and part of that community. How do you see that school? So Frank and I have often had conversations about the role that a school plays in a community, and actually it's really difficult to unpick the complexity of how much a school can influence what's happening in that community. Because of the nature of what they're doing on the ground with the young people, with the families, and it does have a knock-on effect. So actually, you kind of then have to see yourself as part of a bigger community. But also, I think that when you're looking at challenges like we're facing right now, if you are able to look broader than your school boundary, the ability to find solutions and actually talk to people and understand what their concerns might be, or actually different ways of thinking about things. I think these are the kind of approaches then that become really important, and that subtlety of what does it mean to be a cooperative school. Actually, it is, we are a community, and concern for community is a principle of cooperation. It isn't only if you have a child at this school. Actually, if you live in this community, you are impacted by us. So let's kind of bring that all together. And I think that is definitely a subtlety of being a cooperative school. But I also think that some of it is about just generally the ways that you want to see people operate. And I think some of the things that probably are coming through at the moment, it's about that openness and honesty about the challenging situation that we're facing, and the ability to actually talk openly about concerns. So you don't have decisions being made behind closed doors that are then put on people. Actually, there is a co-creation of a solution or an idea. And that sometimes, I guess, if you're in a community school, you kind of think about, well, what is it that we need to achieve? How do we ensure that our children can come back and it's safe? Whereas maybe as a cooperative school, you are thinking about the bigger picture of, okay, we're not in isolation here. We need to be thinking about more than just how we do this in this immediate moment, maybe. Because I think I've been thinking a lot more about cooperative principles because of the growth of the trust, because you need to have that understanding of what does it mean to be a co-op academy, and that it needs to be really clear. And I think
it's a really important point, though. I mean, just to sort of have a leader of that academy or that school or whatever who actually is the strongest ambassador for cooperation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, because going back to us, Dan, isn't it? It's around whether it's cooperation or whatever it is. You know, what the leader is even the way the leader looks at you, let alone what they say, is actually really, really powerful as an indicator. You know,
I go back. I mean, it hit me the whole community bit just as I was leaving headship, because in the weeks leading up to me finishing in the local community, I went to a sandwich shop, and this old chap said, "Oh, so you're the head, are you, up there where the school was? You really put us on the map, haven't you?" That's what he said, and I thought, wow, you know, I don't really know who he is. I don't frequent the shop very often, and yet he felt that the school had done something for the community that had raised its profile.
Yeah,
I learned that to do. I finished then.
Because I think job was done. I mean, I think Hazel and I have spoken a few times about this point around how, when in troubled times, you know, when you've got a big challenge, the true cooperators step forward. You know, and also the way that they're able to articulate it to us. As I think also, I found working in the co-op. I'm actually working in the head office there, meeting people like Hazel and I'll name drop Russell Gill and people like Steve Morales. You know, just there's a sort of, you have to get yourself into a position to think, am I good enough? You know, is my sort of understanding of cooperation strong enough? You know, so that sort of reflection of your own worth it becomes a bit of a spiritual moment, you know, to think about, reflect on your own worthiness, you know, whether or not you're actually falling short of the standards that are expected. And I think Hazel, you and your colleagues have added that to my sort of working pattern. You know, so I think that I look at people like you and think, oh, I'm not living it well enough. Actually, I'm not doing well enough. I really ought to try harder. I do. I feel sort of. I feel short. I feel as if I fall short of the standard at times.
That's imposter. Syndrome, Frank.
Is it?
Yeah.
In your case, it's probably right, actually.
Oh dear.
No, but I think it's, you know, in effect, trying to make the point that the leadership in the school, you know, isn't just to be the most credible cooperator, and actually, you know, just saying that you're going to be committed to the values is just not going to do it, is it? Whether it's in the Co-op Academies Trust or any other cooperative school network, set up, whatever it is.
But exactly, but that's kind of like the nature of cooperation, isn't it? It can't be one person. You can't just have one figurehead that carries something. It has to be the case that the values and the principles underpin that organisation's foundation, so that if they leave, people that will be looking to kind of come into that space understand what it is they're taking on, but actually so that you have that framework within which you're always continually operating. And I think that's one of the beauties of the co-op over the last few years, is that it's really found its way in terms of truly being committed to cooperative values and principles, recognising that there is a benefit to that and shouting about it and the benefits of cooperation. And I think we've seen that over, you know, throughout the crisis in terms of the response that the co-op has been able to kind of do because of the nature of how we're organised and the way we operate. So, you know, the ability to do the right thing, to be able to be active in local communities, actually seeing that is the point, isn't it? We're a community retailer, and in the same way that a school is the heart of a community, actually there's different components that make up a community and you have to come together. But I think that's the reality, isn't it? That you have to have that leadership that understands what it means, but it has to be a collective. It has to be a whole school approach, a whole trust approach. It can't just be individuals, because it will fall, because there's kind of too much in some ways, particularly in an education setting when you're trying to do what the government is asking of you, and then you're also then thinking, well, how does this relate to cooperative values and principles? That's a really big ask.
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, folks, that's 20 minutes.
Wow.
So I want to thank you, Hazel.
No, thank you.
Adding some real insight into cooperative education for us. And thank you, Stan. I think next week it might be just you and me, but because we generally go 1 week on, 1 week off with the guests, so but we'll see. I mean, I think I'm feeling my anxieties about Ofsted continue to rumble, Stan. That next week we just do our Ofsted blitz, and we all our principles around not slagging anybody off and really go for it. But anyway, we'll let everybody know, and I hope you've all enjoyed it. And we'll be obviously, if you've got any thoughts, any ideas on topics, or any comments on things that we've said, please send them through. So I'll say thank you, and it's goodbye from all of us. And
bye.
All right, take care.